briefing this afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Say what? Nope, she was right there. Are we okay, Sarah? Are we good? Okay. Commissioners, are there any items on this evening's agenda that we need to discuss? All right, we do not have any, so we'll move into our updates, and Commissioner Horton is first up with the Fairview Holiday Parade.
Okay. So Corey Wall, one of the organizers, is zooming in.
She was just there.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, Jennifer Horton, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And thank you all for all of the hard work, like not only getting through COVID, but now Hurricane Helene. I am actually born and raised in Fairview and just love our area so much. But the moment that Hurricane Helene happened and the moment right after where the entire community came together is a moment that I'll never forget. None of us will. And I will never leave Fairview now. Fairview is a place that has always been just so community driven. And something that I was really passionate about, something a little bit about me is I'm a real estate agent. And when the hurricane happened, I was like, don't have a business like many other entrepreneurs in Fairview. And so I just dug in and went into fairviewstrong.org and started to help and volunteer my time. And then I met a lovely person by the name of Tiffany Mortier, who is incredible. And she's like, we need to do a parade. We need to add some cheer back into our lives. And we did it. We got the Sheriff's Department involved. We got the Fairview Fire Department involved. And we started posting about it on Facebook. And we were super excited. But the one thing we learned is that we cannot do it on 74A. And as much as I am a, let's just be flexible, let's figure this out, it was a huge bummer to our community. Everybody was super disappointed, but we did end up using, Ben Alexander allowed us to go onto Reynolds High School campus, and Covenant Community Church partnered with us as well to start setting up. And that was a beautiful, lovely thing. We had 40, many of you probably know about it, we had 40 plus businesses, churches, families come out, even, I can't say this without crying. The Craig family had a float, and they already signed up to, we're going to make this happen. They've already signed up, no matter where we're going to do it, somewhere. They've already signed up to be in the float again because the Craig family has been very integral in our community, and we miss so many of them dearly. So anyways, we are just asking that we could please have it on 74A. We have insurance already. Like, we are so prepared. We have talked to so many. And I also planned the anniversary event in Fairview. And something that came of that was just so beautiful is different political views, different political people came and spoke. And no matter where anybody stood, we still are all united. And especially when a tragedy like Hurricane Helene happened. So anyways, I'm really excited to make this happen and be with you guys. And thank you for letting me zoom in. I'm at a conference in Miami, which I was there last year, and I'm realizing I'm having a lot of anxiety. So I'm sure a lot of you, as the anniversary approached, and things that are starting to happen that we did before or after the storm just create some trauma. So I'm thinking about you, and just thank you guys so much for everything you do. We all appreciate it so much.
So Corey, what is the date that it is planned for at this time?
We are planning December 13th, which is Saturday. Saturday, and I think we are hoping to launch in the morning at 9:30, 10 o'clock.
And how can floats sign up to be part of the parade?
I have a Google form created, and it has all sorts of stuff like, do you have a licensed and insured person driving? Do you know that you cannot float or throw candy outside of your vehicle, that you will have to be walking? Are there walking and vehicles in your part of the parade? And I have a lot of other questions, but I can send it to you guys if you need it.
Good. That would be good to have to get out to the community. So today, Corey is presenting because she needs a the group that's organizing needs a resolution from the Board of Commissioners in order to move to the next step, which is the NC DOT application. Does any other commissioners have questions?
Go
Is
ahead.
there anything,
Vice Chair Moore.
is there anything else we need to do from the staff side, or is this just as simple as a vote?
The resolution is already prepared. Staff did that. Thank you so much, staff. And if we could move it to tonight's consent agenda, we can get the resolution to them in order to send in the application this week. Can we move?
Are there any questions or concerns about moving this to the consent agenda? Mr. Euler.
That Ms. Broughton, one of our, the Assistant County Attorney, helped prepare the resolution. Does she have in that resolution the specific dates and times for the closures that we're permitting?
Yes, sir. I submitted all that this week, and she sent me the final product earlier today.
All right, that sounds like, yeah, I have no issues either.
Yes, go ahead.
She's correct. We've worked on the resolution. We didn't have any concerns. Was it Corey? Corey mentioned on the Zoom that we did require insurance because this would be a float on the property, so they have asked for insurance. The only one thing I think was still outstanding is they need to name the county as an additional insured, and they're working on that.
Okay.
So from our perspective, we didn't have any concerns as long as they did that insurance piece.
Okay, great.
Do we have the resolution? Where is it? I'd like to see it before we vote on it.
I can forward it to all commissioners. I'll do that right now.
Yeah.
And Sarah, can you add that to the online? To the briefing side.
Yes, you'll add it to the briefing side, and then we will need to take a vote to add it to the consent agenda.
Yeah.
All right. Any further questions? If not, do I have a motion to add the resolution to this evening's consent agenda?
Motion to add
Thank you.
Fairview Parade to the consent.
Commissioner Horton, second by Commissioner Ball. Further discussion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will add that to this evening's consent agenda, and we'll get that uploaded on our site as well. Thank you, Commissioner Horton, and to Corey for joining us.
Thank you guys so much. This is going to mean so much to so many Fairview businesses who are struggling. I really appreciate you guys.
Thanks. Safe travels back from Miami. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
We have a Helene update, and I think it says Rachel Sawyer, but I see Jeremiah Leroy joining us instead.
Correct. We have two topics for you this afternoon. Jeremiah will talk about the Helene Recovery Office that we're trying to stand up. And then Dr. Ellis Matheson will talk about the CASPER results from last June.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Jeremiah. It's good to see you.
Good to see you all as well. Wait for this presentation to load. There we go. Well, Avril stole my thunder, so there's the agenda for our Helene update today. All right, so as you all are aware, we have been staffing the Helene Recovery Office with internal staff for, I can't believe I'm saying it's been a year that we've been in this role. Obviously, Rachel Sawyer, our Fearless Strategic Partnerships leader, has been leading that charge, and I help wherever I can. And we've got lots of other folks that have been a really big part of this process. And I'm actually really excited to say that we are going to be hiring a full-time recovery officer for Buncombe County. I think the start date is November 3rd. We will be having a full-time recovery officer for the county. So the Helene Recovery Office does exactly what it sounds like, managing the recovery plan, recovery projects, contracts, and of course, coordinating, continually collaborating with existing county departments and our external partners such as FEMA and North Carolina Emergency Management. Obviously, there's a lot of recovery projects. The last few times I've been in front of you guys, that's what we've talked about. Recovery projects, recovery funding. Many of these are things that are coming down the pipeline, but I think it's important to notice, when we talk about things like landslide engineering and remediation, those are happening, right? So yes, there's a lot to come, but there is work going on right now. And I think that's really important when we talk about the vision for what this recovery office looks like. So the recovery officer will answer directly to the county manager. And underneath the recovery officer, what we envision here is project management staff and financial and grants management staff. So what we're currently proposing here is 3 project managers and 2 financial and grant managers. And it's important to note that those 5 positions are listed as grant-funded positions, right? Because many of the funding sources that we're going after do provide funding for the administrative components of the grants. That said, and of course, staff will work diligently to recoup as much as possible of the costs associated with these positions. But it's important to note that there are still a lot of unknowns, right? And that ultimately the county may end up incurring some costs for these positions. But the work is critical, and it needs to happen. And so we're proposing these 5 positions. They are much like, project managers and administrators that, in terms of the roles and responsibilities that we currently have on staff. The recovery officer will manage the office and oversee implementation of the recovery plan, and those project managers will do things a lot like our project managers do now in terms of procurement and construction management and monitoring and tracking. And of course, with each of these comes significant financial reporting and grant reporting and all the things that go along with that. And so that's what we'll see all those financial managers do. Our next step is to take this to you tonight with a budget amendment that establishes these 5 grant-funded positions. So that's going to be on the agenda this evening. And I'm done. Quick and easy. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it before I kick it over to Ellis to talk about the Casper survey.
I do. I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
question. For the grant-funded positions, those 5 positions, so it would just be a temporary job? Will staff that's here already be able to move into that position?
Staff, if staff wanted to transfer into that position, that is an option, yes. They are, by their very nature, grants are temporary, so they would be temporary positions. We're looking at initially like a 5-year period. But of course, that depends on the funding source and how long that funding source lasts. So there are other variables, but yeah, we would consider them temporary positions, and current staff are certainly able to apply for those roles.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wells, you were next.
Thank you. And the grant funded, so do we already have the grants secured, or what's the process with these grant funded positions?
We're creating the positions right now. We do not have a lot in the way of grant funding secured at this time. We have applied for a significant number of grants, but again, as I said, there's a lot of unknowns. We have a lot of funding sources. We've made a lot of applications. For example, like HMGP, we've had 33 or 34 applications for HMGP. We've got some time until we are told whether or not some of those funding sources are going to come to bear. So again, while we are going to do our best to recoup as much of the administrative cost of these positions as we can, there is still the possibility that the county will have to fund some of these out of our general fund.
And so I guess, that's the question then. What's the planning with that? Because obviously we realize we've had to make really hard decisions around budget. So I guess it'd be helpful before this evening just to hear some more about what is the plan. Ideally, right, we're going to get these grants and that's going to cover all these positions. It'd be helpful to understand the backup plan as well with the uncertainty.
The backup plan will be in the future because, as Jeremiah mentioned, we're going after these grants now, and almost all the grants we have do have a component part for administration. But the part I wanted to make sure that you understood, if something were to happen, it would be a backstop on the county. That's what he said it several times. And that's coming from lessons learned. If you recall, we had grant managers for, program managers for bonds, and there was some task that they were doing that was not considered eligible. And so the county had to pick up that piece that wasn't eligible. There might be something that the grants people come back and say that is not eligible, and when they tell us that, then we have to then backstop that with the county. So that's the piece I wanted to make sure you guys understood. We fully intend that almost 100% of this will be covered by the grant, and we'll try very hard to minimize the pieces that are not eligible for the non-eligible pieces. One that comes to mind is every employee has to get signed up in the county system, and that hour or several hours that they take to do that would not be eligible because they're not actually working on the grant. But that was the one stuff like that. And if there's any training that they have to take that is not specifically for the grant, that would not be eligible. So there's some time that we believe they would not have to get paid by the grant, but we would try to minimize that as much as possible and keep them 100% focused. But we wanted to make sure that we put that caveat out there for everybody to understand as we go into this. There may be some hours that would not be eligible.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Commissioner Ball.
You got that question answered? Are there other questions for Jeremiah?
Yes. Commissioner Horton was asking on this side as well, because he mentioned we're looking at about 5 years. We do know that Helene and recovery is going to take some time, and we're expecting to take several years to get all these projects completed. Her question was, at the end of that 5 years, will that then considered a job loss for this specific employee? And the answer is yes. We tell every single person that gets a grant that we know that this is going to end, and unless there's another position that the county has that they can then apply for, that's a full-time position, that specific position will end at the end of the grant period.
Any other questions? All right, Jeremiah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Let's see if get the presentation up. All right. So this afternoon, I am excited to bring you a summary of the results and the recommendations from the Community Assessment for Public Health Response, or the CASPR survey, as you've heard it called, that we implemented with our partners at North Carolina Department of Public Health and Spatial Consulting. And so we implemented this survey on June 4th, and this is a household level survey. So it is not individual answers from individuals. One person would answer the survey questions for the entire household. And like I said, it was an in-person, door-to-door survey. And you can see that we had a very high completion rate, and we believe that this was in part due to our partnership utilizing our partners at the fire districts, community paramedics, our mobile team. They had already had trust built out in the community, so people were willing to open their doors and have conversations. So the total of surveys that we wanted to get was 210, and we got 210. We planned on 3 days, but we accomplished this within 2 days. So I think that really does speak to the relationships that we do have out in the community. So the questions did include questions around understanding public health information that people experienced during Helene and what they could be experiencing right then. And I think it's also important to note that this is not, these questions were not for a specific population. For example, these questions were not asked to people in assisted living or an unhoused person. The majority of respondents lived in a single-family dwelling, and they were the owners of that dwelling. We did not collect demographics such as sex, race, or specific ages. Since it was a household level survey, we did ask the number of people who were in certain age ranges, and the most frequent response that we did receive was between the ages of 18 to 64. as well as when we did go to the households, we made sure that we brought resources with us, so we weren't just extracting information from people. We wanted to make sure that people had what they needed, and this was an opportunity to do that in person. So we made sure people understood what resources were available at the Helene Resource Center and actually did a warm handoff for any resources they need through that. We provided wildfire prevention education, as well as we brought well testing kits out with us, so anybody who did have a well could have access to that testing supplies and education right then. All right, so now I'm going to go through the three main themes that emerged from this. Our partners at North Carolina DPH did provide us with a report. And this is what came out of the report, as well as they did do the data analysis for us. So the first theme emerging was around whole person healthcare. And as you can see up here, 45.7% of the households surveyed reported at least one member experiencing new or worsening behavioral health symptoms since Hurricane Helene. And then over here, you can also see the different symptoms that people were reporting, with anxiety, worry, and depressed mood as sort of the top symptoms reported. I don't think this is probably shocking for any of us. This gives us the data on the paper. And then another question was around accessing medical care. And so, good news. 7.9% of the households, or around 8%, reported that they had difficulty accessing medical care. So the majority of people did not have a problem. Those who did reported that some of the barriers were that their clinics were closed or the healthcare provider was unavailable, which we totally understand, especially in the beginning. No power, no communication. And then insurance problems and money cost, which I think if we asked this to people prior to the hurricane, we would have heard those barriers as well. And so recommendations, I will say that for all of the recommendations, public health really plans to partner with other community departments, community-based organizations, and specific communities, and really to incorporate this work into work that's already happening in the plans and projects that you've already been hearing about. So the first recommendation to expand access to coordinated whole person healthcare with focused investment in behavioral health resources. And then you can see sort of the strategies and solutions we'll utilize to implement this work. We've got 2 Helene Recovery Plan projects that this can be incorporated in, as well as one of the 2030 strategic plan goals to increase health resources and service access. Our opioid settlement fund allocations for substance use disorder related treatment programs that include services and or referrals to holistic care. And then the safety net provider network, there's coordination collaboration that has been going on and will continue. The next theme that emerged was around emergency preparedness. This example of data is around barriers to evacuation. So 38% of the households surveyed reported some or all members evacuated at some point due to the hurricane. And of those people, you can see the reasons that people said they did not evacuate. I think it's also important to note that a household could answer more than one response. But you do see up here people saying they did not need to evacuate, as well as did not believe evacuation is necessary. And then 8.5% said they did not receive evacuation alerts or warnings. This is an area where I think we can dig down and understand some more for the community as we work to implement our plans around preparedness. And so the recommendation coming out of this was partner with community organizations to strengthen awareness of emergency preparedness, knowledge, and resources. And once again, you see the recovery plan project of supporting community organizations and then incorporating work into the community risk reduction campaign, as well as a preparedness media campaign with our partners at Western North Carolina Health Network. And then the third theme being around environmental health. As you can see, 1/5 of the households stated they did not feel their source of tap water was safe at the time of the survey. And remember, we did the survey in June. I do also think it's important to point out that respondents may have been on city water, but also may have been responding having well water. Out of 14.3% of households that saw mold or smelled musty odors in their home after the storm, 61% of those continued to see mold or smell musty odors at the time of the survey. And the barriers that were expressed around that was for the remediation included cost, and then also challenges with landlord responses for renters. And so this recommendation is to develop and implement a comprehensive environmental health education initiative that includes linking the community to resources. Once again, you can see one of our Helene recovery plans, the community risk reduction campaign, and then within the preparedness action plan, establishing the comprehensive emergency commodities redistribution and distribution point of operation plan. And that will include items around extreme temperature hazard resources, and then establishing emergency shelter supply resource plan to include also those resources around extreme temperature, but also things such as PPE and what needs to be utilized to clean up things such as mold. And then finally, just some other points to point out some ongoing concerns that came out of the survey. Over half of the household surveys reported being worried or stressed about another disaster affecting their home. Households also reported worries or changes in the environment, feeling safe in the community. I do want to qualify that particular question did not dig down into how people were not feeling safe. So another area we can do some more work. Concerns about the health of themselves or family members, being able to pay bills, rent, mortgage, or having enough food to eat. Which once again, I don't think that's a surprise for many of us. But once again, it's important for us to remember this is really just data. It's another tool in our toolbox, along with things like our community health assessment. So as we partner with the community to really find solutions and resources as we move through recovery, this is data that we can use. This report will be on our website. It was also in your packet today. So the full report does include the questions that were asked in the appendix, as well as the full report with all the complete data analysis. And then once again, this is just the list of the recommendations that came out of the report. Any questions?
I do have a question. First of all, thank you for this good work. And I would like to know more around the plans when you spoke about the mold and the fact that folks were still dealing with these issues, because recently that came to my attention too. I was speaking with some community members who a year after the storm, and there's a retired couple, and they still had mold issues, and that greatly concerned me because I wonder about who all's kind of fallen through the cracks with situations like that. And so can you speak more to what the plan is to help work on those addressing those issues?
Yeah, so I totally agree that people, I don't think, have maybe first of all, the specific education of how to appropriate clean it, but then access to the resources to do the appropriate cleaning. That could be related to cost, or we also heard about people who are renting. And so I think we really need to sit down with individual communities to identify how and where they want to receive and understand about the resources that are available to them, and who can they connect with, so that we might connect them with other resources that may or outside of our community. So there's more work to be done, and I think the plan around the different community pods that we're looking at creating and having access to those sort of supplies is going to be really important as we move forward in that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, I would say in the short term, they can always reach out to disaster case management to help guide them to some of those resources and help fill out maybe if they need repairs to renew and see in that repair process. So I would highly recommend that they reach out to that disaster case management.
And I agree, and so if we happen to know or they reach out, but that made me realize how
There's
many
others.
people, because I just happened to be in that neighborhood and then found out, and so it just really, it concerned me about who is out there that still needs help that isn't aware of the resources. But thank you, I'm really glad that you've spotlighted this, and there's a plan too to really help bring awareness to it as well.
Any other questions for Dr. Matheson? All right, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate the presentation. All right, our next item is with Jonathan Jones and Ina Chan, FEMA Temporary Housing Units. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Jonathan Jones with the Community Development Division. Staff have been providing updates on housing recovery initiatives over the last year. And today we are going to hear an update directly from FEMA, specifically looking at the year-to-date impacts and assistance provided. Focusing directly on FEMA's temporary housing program, those efforts that FEMA is providing housing for survivors here in Buncombe County, what their process for sales and donations of those units are, how the review process and recertification process goes for those households, and then looking at the process of handling those units after they've met their useful time here in the county. But rather than having that come from staff, we have Ina Chan, who is the Individual Assistance Branch Director with FEMA, to share that update.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Ina. I'm with FEMA, and thank you for having me back here again. So just want to give you some updates on this. So far, just in Buncombe County, we've had 199 destroyed owners, 179 destroyed renters. Of those, 8,730 survivors have received housing assistance, totaling a little over $75 million. Of those, 67, almost 68 millions have gone to repair replacement of their damaged dwelling. And of those, you know, we break it down because our program, the Individual Assistance Program, is a little complicated. That's putting it lightly. So of the 1,601 survivors that received, they have received rental assistance. And rental assistance comes in 3 different areas, right? So we have the initial rental assistance, then we have displacement, and then on the longer term for FEMA's individual assistance, which is up to 18 months, from the date of disaster, which is March 29th, 2026, where they can receive rental assistance. We've already dispersed over $7 million to the 1,601. So of those that are still receiving continued temporary housing assistance, rental assistance, is about 161. And that process is, like I mentioned earlier, it's a little complicated because they have to provide proof of the lease agreements. They have to show that there is a need, that their damaged dwelling, whether it is a homeowner or a renter, is still in a need for that. And so they have to provide those documentation to us on a regular basis to show that they continually need it. Flipping over to our temporary housing program, we have housed in Buncombe County 83 households. Of those, 51 of them have returned to their damaged dwelling. And it's a negative saying calling it a damaged dwelling, but that's the only way we can differentiate between them returning to their repair or rebuilt home. So we still call it a damaged dwelling. It doesn't mean it's still in a damaged state, okay? So that means they have gotten back to at least a level where it is safe, sanitary, and habitable. And or, in some instances for renters, or even some homeowners, they choose to go into the other realm of, I'm gonna go look for a rental. So those folks, the 83 folks have, 51 folks have chosen to either look for another rental resource or have repair and rebuild their damaged dwelling. Of those two, we have sold 9 of our FEMA units that they lived in. And some of them are at a what we call fair market rate, and for low income, so they have to provide their income. And in this specific event, we did a one price for all, which is not the normal high dollar amount for whether it's a travel trailer or a mobile home unit. Another amazing thing that has happened for North Carolina in this event is we have secured quite a few nonprofit organizations, volunteer agencies that are purchasing units on behalf of the applicants. So what they do is they provide the funding, and we then, on the bill of sale, the survivors will get to keep the unit. So there's a couple things that encompasses in order for them to be eligible for that as well. So currently, we have 32 Buncombe County residents in FEMA's temporary housing program. Of those, it's broken down between 20 owners and 12 renters. So we also kind of broke it down because we had 3 types of temporary housing that we offered in this disaster. Direct lease, which is where we rent we get into a lease agreement with apartments or homes that are available for rental, and we pay the monthly rent to those, and we license in the survivors to live in those until the end of the program, or until they're done with whatever their permanent housing plan is. So you'll see 7 are in direct lease. For MHUs, are mobile home units. There's currently 22 in commercial parks, and there's 1 mobile home in a private property. For travel trailers, there's currently 2 on a private property, totaling 32 that are still remaining of the initial 83 that was housed for Buncombe County. So great progress in the 1-year time. So current temporary housing sales, as we talked about earlier, we had 32 that are currently still residing in FEMA's temporary housing program. 11 are participating in the sales program. 21 remaining survivors currently in the temporary housing program. Of those, 3 have violated their licensing agreement. When they violate their licensing agreement, what does that mean, right? Violations could include not adhering to any of the licensing agreement. That means they cannot use the FEMA property, the temporary housing, whether it's for commercial use. We've had drugs, we've had prostitution happen, we've had, you name it, we've had it, okay? So those are violations. Even to as simple as not maintaining and keeping the unit clean. We've had bug infestation because people are just trashing it. I could go on the amounts of different violations. But currently there are 3 in violation, and once they are in violation, they are given warning of what their violation is. They're given a set amount of time to take corrective actions. And if that is still not happening, they're then given a notice to surrender that unit, and they have to move out of the unit. So I just wanted to also clarify that FEMA does not evict people from our units, from our temporary housing units. It could be up to, if the unit is on a commercial park or in a direct lease, it is up to the property owner to do the eviction. FEMA does not evict folks out of our temporary housing program. We will ask them to basically notice to surrender the unit or the apartments if they are in violation of the licensing agreement. And all those has gone through with each and every individual. If there's a language barrier, we make sure that there's an individual that is there to explain it in their language, including sign language, and anything that needs to be to the point where they can have clear understanding of what that licensing agreement means. And then I'll go into what happens while they're in the unit, but we'll skip into the sales program. So currently, 32 survivors in Buncombe County have received letters of interest to participate in FEMA's program. So that means letting them know that they're eligible to purchase the unit, and they will have time to think about it and let us know. 20 of those have responded and says that they are interested. And when they decline, a lot of times it's because they don't have the finances, because we also have to take into consideration the amount of funds that they have received from FEMA. So if they have the funds, they also have to show that they still have the funds, or if they use the funds to repair and rebuild their damaged dwelling, and let's say it has gone nowhere, or the contractor ran away, anything could happen, right? As long as they keep the documentation showing us that they have used the funds accordingly and not take their family on vacation or buy a new truck or buy a big TV, that type of thing, that is misuse of funds. Then we will still find a way to get them the additional funds to purchase a unit. And this is what I kind of talked about earlier. We have been able to secure volunteer agencies to purchase these units for these survivors, even some that didn't have enough funds, that they said, no, we're not interested because they didn't have enough money. When we were able to secure these fundings, we went back and called these folks that had declined initially because of lack of funding and asked them if they were still interested. And if so, we will move them along the process of the sales program. So again, 9 have already made the purchases of the unit, and they have those units in their names. So that's a good story on that. So just some of the, yes.
If you don't mind, before you move to the next slide, by FEMA standards, what's the difference between a notice to surrender and an eviction?
So we don't use eviction because we don't evict anybody. We ask them to surrender the unit. When they surrender the unit, it's because they have violated the license and agreement. What happens is, if they choose to stay in there even after they've been issued the notice of surrender, what happens is their case will get sent to the Department of Justice. And then that's when we're done. FEMA walks away from it because the case has been handed over to the Department of Justice. They will then, in turn, go and prosecute for the violation.
So as far as the person's concerned, it's the same process, it's just being run by the federal government as opposed to through state court eviction?
Correct.
Either way, they're getting kicked out.
We don't want to use the word kicked out. If they have violated their license and agreement, they have not adhered to the agreement, to it. Like in any rental unit, right? If you did not follow the rules of your rental agreement, you have violated the agreement. So what happens in those instances is the same thing. We have to make sure that the federal government property is taken care of as well.
Not contesting that,
Yeah.
just wanted to understand the effectiveness.
No, absolutely.
On the consumer side.
And it's that tomato thing, right? The choice of words. But in our language, we don't like to use the word eviction. We do call it a notice to surrender.
Okay.
Because it is a choice of the survivor to surrender the unit or not.
Okay, so I'm not a lawyer, so that means that they're gonna get federal charges?
Yes.
Wow.
And once they go through the Department of Justice, and like we always joke around, right? We say, don't ever owe the federal government money because they will find you. They will garnish your pay. And in fact, what happens is any of those cases that do go to the Department of Justice, they will no longer for the rest of their life be eligible for FEMA's temporary housing program.
So I guess that the reason I asked for that distinction is so I can better understand, do you have, and we can ask about this offline because I know it's sensitive, and the myriad of violations that you could have under any given lease varies from technical to substantive. Do you have specific data on the 3 people that were removed for the basis for that?
Yes.
Can we ask you about that, or is that confidential?
No, it's a privacy. According to the Privacy Act, we can't release that information.
So for our purposes, we don't know from our side, not your side?
Not your side, yes.
Okay.
According to the Privacy Act, I'm not able to release that information,
Thank you.
unfortunately. But I can tell you though, when these notices are served or if there's any violation, the state is also part of, and I'll talk about this in this next slide, right? The actions that we've taken. Because normally what we call a recertification, our normal recertification process takes place every 30 days. So we visit the survivors that are living in our temporary housing and we recertify them or not. Recertifying them means, we'll say, hey, how's your progress going? If you're a homeowner, how's your, repairing going? We'll even go look at the damaged dwelling to look at how much repairs have been done. We'll also validate and verify, with the contractors, construction material, or if there's anything that's holding them back from moving towards getting their damaged dwelling fixed. For renters, we'll also provide them rental resources as well within their budget, right? Because everyone has a budget. And in this event, what we've done early on is we're talking from August 4th on. It was a collaborative effort, not just with FEMA, but also with state representatives as well as disaster case management. They go out together on the recertification process, and the state has requested to do it every 14 days instead of every 30 days to do the recertification. So a lot of handholding. And so they're there when they see, whatever the instance is on the violation, they're aware of it. They're there to help and support working with the survivor to how to fix it, how to change it. And of course, with major violations such as drugs and all that stuff, there's no ands, ifs, or buts. They have just broken the law, right, in every avenue. So those things are being done not just from the federal side, but also from the state as well as disaster case management. So some of the things that we also have provided potential resources and also looking at what they potentially could need are some such as, construction material, could be labor, not just materials, donated units. We've partnered up with some volunteer agencies that have donated units, and we've paired them off with some of these survivors. Rental assistance, some of these organizations have provided rental assistance, first, last month rent, deposit, all that's utilities. They have provided these things for renters as well. Moving, not just moving of their furniture, even some of those that have purchased our unit, they want to move it, they're currently in a commercial park because we sell the unit as is where is. So if they're licensed into a unit that's in a commercial park, it is the responsibility of the individual to move the unit to their private property or wherever they want to move it. Once the sale is closed, it is theirs. They can take it. And we see that there is some burden too, because moving those units are really expensive. We're looking at between probably $10,000 to $12,000, and depending on the distance too, right? So some of these organizations have stepped up and have paid for the moving expenses of these units. So those are still, we're making headways on those. Furniture, and even identifying USDA rural development housing as well as HUD housing, because we know that a lot of them have lost their job. They're now considered low income because before disaster, they weren't. They had jobs, but they lost their job. Now they don't have anything. So we paired them up to see if maybe they could potentially qualify for HUD housing or even USDA RD housing, which we keep an ongoing what's open. We've made them go on as a priority on the list to be expedited to get into those units. Even rental housing and of course the CDBG-DR funding as well. So.
Quick question. So for folks who are on a commercial site, isn't it just easier for them to just take over the lease and maintain that trailer within that community?
Yes, that is part of the sales program. So let's say, for example, we have the survivors that are currently in our temporary housing unit where we're paying the commercial pad lease, right? And they're eligible for the unit. And they say, you know what? I want to stay in this commercial park. Love it here. They're great. But, we can't afford the unit and the pad lease. Well, if we are able to get them the purchase of the unit, from the volunteer agencies, now they've saved up money. So whatever they were paying prior to the event, what rent they were paying is probably cheaper than what the pad lease is. So one of the requirements for those survivors that choose to stay in the commercial park would be they have to get into a lease agreement with the commercial park owner and also show us that the commercial park owner is saying, yes, they are going to go into a lease agreement with us. So keep in mind, we also once we close the sale, we also give each of the survivors 30 days. We pay the pad lease for the next 30 days for them to, get their stuff together or be able to secure more funding or whatever it is that they need to do so that, ensuring them that they will get to their permanent housing solution. You're welcome.
Are there further questions?
Oops.
Oh, you're not done, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Wanted to talk a little bit about our sales and donations program. And I know this was brought up earlier on in the event. What does FEMA do with the units that after the survivors leave? Because I know one of the things that the county had asked for was they wanted to keep all the units within the county, right? So unfortunately, the law does not allow us to do that. So what we do as a whole is we have GSA sales. So unfortunately, due to the government shutdown currently, the sales has stopped, but all the units are in our staging area in Hickory, where we keep all the units. And once that GSA sales starts back up, people can go in there and bid on those units and go there, pick it up, and take it to wherever they need to take it. So, you know, we want to make sure that everyone is aware of that, and we've included the link to that once the GSA is back in business after the shutdown. That will happen. But also keep in mind, too, even though the sales and donations was approved for this event, the donations part has to go to the survivors that are currently living in the unit. They have exhausted every single avenue, and that is the last resort. So right now, we're still doing the sales, right? We've identified agencies that are purchasing the unit for the survivors. So we're not at that juncture yet where if the county wants to, you know, take ownership of the unit for that survivor that's living in there, they will also, and it could be voluntary agencies or any entity, even the state if they want to. But know that it comes with a lot of responsibilities including monthly maintenance of the units, insurance, if it's in an SFHA or not in an SFHA, you know, pad lease, all that stuff is encompassed in that part of the donations. So just want to set that part up front, right? And that's what it means. It doesn't mean that we will just give you a whole bunch of units and you can do whatever you want to do it, because we also have to make sure that we are doing what we are doing best to make sure the federal dollars are being spent wisely. And then I have one more. So this is kind of what I just went through on the donations part of it. Again, we have to wait until all sales is completed before that is considered. And so currently, right now, if I may go back, I'm going to let you know on this part here, this one chart. So currently, our temporary housing program ends on the end of March in 2026. I'm happy to say that come February is when the projected last 3 Buncombe County residents will be needing our temporary housing unit. So that is a great thing. We're not waiting till the end of March to work with folks to get to it, right? We're taking that stand of, let's work on it earlier. Let's exhaust every avenue possible. You know, my volunteer agency liaisons have tapped into all the volunteer agencies to see what type of funding they have, what type of resources they have, so that we can start this earlier. And that's why it's good that we can see we're only going to have 3 left, 2 renters and 1 homeowner, if they are going to be there until the end of February. So that's pretty much it for me. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer if I have it.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
First, I mean, I know the government shut down, so thank you, the federal government shut down, so thank you for being here today. And thank you for the millions of dollars that FEMA has provided to members of our community to recover from the storm, and for working alongside so many unique circumstances. As these trailers are being decommissioned and going over to GSA sales, housing affordability is a huge crisis here in Buncombe County, and this seems to me an opportunity for the county to potentially have units donated or purchased at a very low rate, because I've spoken to nonprofit leaders who are interested in taking over those units and helping to provide low-cost, potentially low-barrier housing to members of our community. So I just want to make sure we're clear in understanding what we can do to maintain these trailers, these units in our community for potential use for future residents who are still recovering or just need an affordable place to live.
So unfortunately, there's not too much I can expand on, and due to the new administration, a lot of the prior disaster things that happened in North Carolina is no longer. So until we have a different set of rules and laws, right now for this disaster, in the current administration, those units will not be available.
Even through purchase?
For purchase, yes, but not as a donation where in the past, and I know, because I've been in this business for 17 years. I've been in other states where we've worked with not just the county, but also with the state on these extra surplus units that have been used, right? And we clean and make ready so that it's ready for the next person. Unfortunately, right now, in this current time, we can't do that.
Okay.
And thank you for understanding.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have one clarification. So if I'm understanding correctly, for those in the current temporary housing and cells, you have a plan for everyone of all those survivors as of, well, February.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at the 161 survivors that are still continuing to receive rental assistance.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak more about the plan for those 161?
So currently there, because our individual household program, which is the financial side of it, right? So we have the financial side and we have the direct housing side. So on the financial side, as well as the direct housing side, it's still an 18-month program for individual assistance. So that time is still ending at the end of March. So unfortunately, at the end of March, they will not receive any more additional rental assistance unless there's some thing that extends the program. But right now, and I can tell you again, in my time with FEMA, we've rarely, if any, I don't think I've ever had any event that has ever gone past the 18 months for extension, because a lot of things have to be considered, right? What is the current housing market? Why is those individuals unable to afford that? Does the state not have any resources? Does the counties not have any resources? If every single avenue is exhausted, including any grants that could potentially be going to the state and to the county have been exhausted, then that could potentially be a reason. But with so many grants that are coming through, especially with the CDBGDR grant coming through or has gone through, how the state managed and distributed the funding of the CDBGDR funding does not justify any further assistance needed to extend for FEMA's IA program.
And so with those 161 currently, and that program ends in March, but are disaster case managers someone working with all of those folks to help them with a plan?
Yes, disaster case management is working with each and every one of them as long as they're willing to sign up and do it as well. So we can't, can lead the horse to the water, we can't make them drink it, right?
Ina, can I jump in there real quick?
Yes.
They meet monthly and recertify they're eligible. So they're talking to those survivors on a monthly basis for the recertification
Yes.
and trying to get them to a permanent housing place. Yes, ma'am.
So we're talking like what we talked about earlier, the HUD housing, the USDARD housing. And also keep in mind, renters, they have not had to pay rent in the last 12 months now. And when we come up in March, it'll be 18 months that they did not have to pay rent. So a lot of the questions that even the team has asked the survivors is, what have you been doing to the money that you would have spent on rent?
Okay, thank you.
Just a little thought. Any other questions? Thank you, and if you think of any, please, by all means, the county team knows how to reach me. All right, thank you.
We appreciate your time. All right, Kathleen Blackney is up next with a strategic plan update.
Commissioners. I am here to give you an update on the 2030 strategic planning process. The most significant update since your last update in September is that we engaged in a second round of community engagement to gather feedback on the draft strategic plan through the Envision Buncombe, a Path Forward survey. This was open from September 16th through October 3rd. And as with all of our Envision Buncombe surveying, this was a coordinated effort to ask the community about their recovery priorities as well as priorities in general through 2030. We were able to organize the survey so that folks could choose. I want to talk about the strategic plan. I'm really interested in commenting on recovery projects or both. So when we looked at the survey results specifically for comments on strategic plan content, we found that 41 individuals had submitted 45 comments about the strategic plan. And we really had one key question on the strategic plan content, which is, what are we missing? Of all the goals, all the information in here, your priorities for the community, what did we miss in all this content? So looking at those 45 comments, we were able to find some shared themes across the feedback that we heard. When looking at what's missing in the strategic plan, folks had comments around growth and development, infrastructure, preparedness and resilience, public safety, housing, mental health, energy and the environment, government accountability, homelessness, the economy and support for the workforce, our aging population, transport and access, really broadly, and then parks, greenways, green spaces as another broad category. So we were able to look at these themes and analyze that in the context of the draft 2030 strategic plan, as well as our draft Helene recovery plan, given the fact that this was a coordinated survey. A lot of what we heard was really focused on Tropical Storm Helene, what the community's been through, and was good fit for feedback for the recovery projects. So looking at the scope of the 2030 strategic plan, what was in there, we identified 4 areas as gaps that aligned with the strategic plan, its current draft, and what we heard from the community. Those were youth mental health, really focusing on outcomes in youth mental health, homelessness, specifically a holistic approach to supporting our unhoused neighbors, the aging population, and really specifically a comprehensive framework for supporting aging residents, as well as access to care, health care in particular, and how do we measure access in general? What does it mean for people to be able to access health resources? So from those gaps, we then focused on the county's role. Remember, there's a couple criteria for our strategic plan goals. The first is that it must be measurable. We have to have a data source so we can understand how we are moving towards our goal. And another criteria for these goals is that they must fall within the county's scope of operations, right? This has to be something that we have jurisdiction over, that we have the ability to influence for something to be in the strategic plan. So before even bringing these 4 areas forward, we wanted to take a look at within these gaps that the community identified for us really, what is our role? How could we influence goals and outcomes in these areas? So we're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about the answer to that question, working with staff, working with subject matter experts, what did we hear? Before I go into those specific suggestions though, I wanna share a little bit of context for consideration about the 2030 strategic plan as a community in recovery from natural disaster, that we'll be implementing the Helene recovery plan and a preparedness action plan during the same lifespan as this strategic plan. Which is just looking at the 2025 strategic plan as adopted by the Board of Commissioners. We had 16 goals in there. Granted, they were much broader, right? In the 2030 draft plan, we've added in objectives to be those broader bridges with 64 measurable SMART goals underneath each of those. So even if the breadth of this plan is pretty comparable, we've really deepened the work of the 2030 strategic plan. Nonetheless, we want to talk about the goals, what we've heard from subject matter experts, how we can identify those gaps as we consider this context. And so I'm about to dive into each of those areas with this context framed. And after I've talked about each area, we'll be really looking for feedback and guidance from the commission about how to move forward with these potential goals and moving forward with this ambitious and comprehensive draft strategic plan that we have largely heard endorsement from the board at each of our touch points to date. So that first gap that we talked about was youth mental health. We did a lot of work with staff and subject matter experts. We spoke to epidemiologists with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, honestly asking the question, if the community said, we want to see a focus on youth mental health outcomes, what are those? What are outcomes to understand youth mental health? We heard about things such as deaths by suicide, emergency department visits, different indicators at that population level. And then when we brought it back to that question of what do we do, what's within our scope of operations, the county is not a direct care provider of youth mental health services. We do a lot of coordination, collaboration, support through funding resources for community partners. And when looking through that lens, what we really heard from staff is not only is mental health explicitly stated in the community health focus area in a couple existing goals in the draft plan, we have a goal to reduce deaths by suicide as well as increase connection through in-person events. Our staff asked us to also remember this goal in the education focus area around reducing youth court referrals. So that's students getting referred for court involvement out of schools, and highlighting the fact that quite often those court referrals can be associated with unmet mental health needs, displaying themselves in behaviors in school settings that can result in a referral to court involvement. And when looking at, again, what is our avenue, resources and organizations like the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council and funding that they offer to connect either students who already, young people who already have some sort of involvement with the juvenile justice system or are at risk for that sort of involvement, to trauma responsive programming, these community organizations that center themselves in trauma informed practices. They see this goal in the education focus area as the outcome of that funding. That if these services are working, we will see a reduction in those referrals. And so looking at the population level outcomes that I've already mentioned, the staff recommendation is that within our scope of practice, we have some goals to reflect that in the draft strategic plan at this time. The next topic that we identified was homelessness and mental health. Context that we heard when working with our staff around this one is the importance of centering a housing first approach. So whatever we move forward with, it is vital to avoid treatment as a precondition of housing or shelter access. We absolutely can support that coordination, that connection to resources for our unhoused neighbors, but to avoid even the implication of you must engage in treatment in order to get this resource was really clearly stated by the staff that we spoke to. Some other context that we were reminded of is that Buncombe County is a partner in the continuum of care with the city of Asheville and our service provider community, but we do not provide direct homelessness services as a county function. And as a result of that, we have had difficulty identifying a data source to understand how the county's work is impacting outcomes associated with homelessness and a holistic approach to homelessness and mental health care. So staff's recommendation, looking at, there is an emphasis and a real interest in focusing on outreach in rural and unincorporated parts of Buncombe County to folks living unsheltered in those areas. That is work that is in development and hopefully will be growing over this plan's lifespan. So their recommendation was to, as we have been unable to secure a data source at this time, to keep exploring opportunities for goal development over this plan's lifespan, as it's possible that that portfolio, what we do, what we are measuring about our own work, might look a little different with it between today and 2030, is what we heard on that topic. The next topic was access to care. Context, there is a goal right now in the draft community health focus area around increasing the number of residents who are successfully connected to the healthcare resources they need through a community referral system. Dug in a little bit for what does it mean for a referral to be accepted, because that's really what we're measuring here, right? I said I have this gap in my ability to get seen for X, Y, or Z. What does it mean for that to be accepted? Couple things we heard in these conversations. One, to emphasize the different types of services that are tracked in this community referral system. Yes, it's what we typically might think of as healthcare, like a primary care provider, a dentist, mental health treatment, but it's also really tracks social determinants of health. So things like referral for transportation resources, housing access, employment services, as well as referral to benefits navigation. So somebody who may not have health insurance, may not be enrolled in Medicaid, SNAP, any sort of benefit services, people are getting referred and tracking how successfully that referral is occurring through this community referral system. An additional note that was highlighted in these conversations was that to say that a referral was accepted doesn't just mean it went through the computer system. It means that the referral was sent and whatever agency received that referral accepted it, indicating that they had capacity to see that individual and would reach out to schedule a visit. So it's really being connected to care in that way. That said, depending on what we mean by access, and really that's what we heard, is how do we define that? How can we set a goal that helps us understanding that? Our staff and subject matter experts did identify an opportunity to get really specific within this goal and add an element or a specific goal to track those referrals for benefits navigation specifically, in addition to care in general, or we could report out on this existing goal by each of those service types that I mentioned that track traditional healthcare access as well as connection to social determinants of health resources as well, to really be specific in what we mean by connecting people through this referral system. What are we getting connected to, and what are people not being able to get connected to as tracked within this system, was something that was highlighted in our conversations. And then the final area was aging population, and specifically that holistic structure, that comprehensive structure for supporting our aging neighbors. There is a goal in the current draft strategic plan around supporting our aging population. It currently reads to decrease the number of community members over 65 with reported independent living difficulty by 2030. When speaking to our adult and aging services subject matter experts in the county, what we heard was that this goal is actually tied directly to our age-friendly Buncombe County infrastructure. So there is an age-friendly action plan in place through social work. It currently goes through 2024, and they anticipate releasing the 2026 through 2030 action plan in January. And they see that as our framework for supporting the aging population and recommend that the existing goal in the plan aligns very strongly with the priorities, initiatives, and the work laid out in that action plan, and would endorse focusing on this goal as what a relevant and strong measure of what the county is doing through that plan to support our aging neighbors. So, as I said a little bit earlier, a lot of different areas in there, went through all of them relatively quickly. So as we look at the planning timeline, we are here in October to share what we heard from the community, opportunities for goal development identified based on that feedback, with a goal of coming back at the next commissioner meeting to adopt the strategic plan. But that said, really looking for that guidance and feedback from the commission on how to move forward based on this balance of what we've heard from the community and guidance from subject matter experts around potential gaps in the plan.
Thank you, Kathleen. Are there questions?
Is there any way that we can see the feedback from the community?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just to thank you for the intentionality put into how to respond, and I really like the touch point of, I'm gonna use the wrong word, but not just taking people up to the finish line, but an actual engagement in services, especially talking about our youth, and the houselessness portion was really powerful about not just how do we refer people and then say we're done, but meaningfully connect the dots for people as best we can, so we're keeping track of that in a way that's going to have a tangible impact.
Thank you.
All right, Kathleen, thank you, and thanks to all of the staff. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to this coming forward. Oh, I believe there's one more question.
Sorry, I was just curious. So I believe the next time we'll see this, we will be taking a vote on it. Right, so I just want to make sure I'm clear on I think it was, yes, so homelessness and mental health, we're going to explore how to shape that a little more. And then will we see that before we take a vote on it, or?
The most recent recommendation from our staff is that that is for future development as programs expand and our ability to understand what we really mean by expanding outreach.
Yeah.
It's an intention, it's work underway. So that would be not prior to November 4th, no.
Okay, thank you.
So commissioners, before we leave, I want to make sure that I have clarity as well. So can we pull the PowerPoint back up, please? And let's go back to each focus area and make sure each feedback point that we have, Kathleen, and make sure we get clear guidance and buy-in on all of them. So you have staff recommendation there. Just want to make sure you're okay and clear on that. We will look at that new draft. So if you can walk through each one and get an affirmative yes or no, that would be what I would prefer.
I appreciate
No
the
pressure.
phone call. Thank you, Avril. So yes, the first area was youth mental health. Staff recommendation is that within our portfolio, what the county does in our scope of operations, we are effectively measuring that through goals like the existing one in education around youth court referrals. That's just one example. We've spoken previously about the multiple goals to address mental health. So the current recommendation is that there was not an additional goal to be developed within our scope of operations. That is the current recommendation on this area.
Are we good? You want us to consensus? Okay.
Just if you see it differently, you don't have to vote, but,
All right.
okay, good.
So then that would bring us to the second area, which was around homelessness and mental health, which, as Commissioner Ball just clarified around, that we do see opportunity, but that would be to revisit in the future at points when we're looking at progress on the strategic plan during its lifespan. We do not have a goal to propose at this time, so there is no proposal to add a goal or draft something new around this topic today.
All right.
All right.
You want the next one too?
And the next one.
I believe the next one was access to care.
We are winding up now, so if there's stuff we need to go back and do, I wanted to make sure we had clear guidance on what's that next look like.
And I conflated too, the homelessness and the access to care one. That access to care is what I intended. I guess this might be implicit in what you're saying, but increase the percentage of referrals for benefits navigation that are accepted in the community referral system. Is there any thought around assuring correct connection as well? If someone came back and said, hey, you linked me up with the wrong service, I actually needed this, you just misunderstood during my intake, would that impact your numbers in any way, or is that something we have to specifically expressly say?
It wouldn't directly impact the measure in that original referral, if it was accepted, would be tracked as accepted. However, presumably, then it would lead to an additional referral for the correct level of care. So whether or not they're able to access that would be tracked at that point of, oh, we referred you to A, you need B. B is now measured.
So either way, the data's being,
Yeah.
got it. Perfect.
But a bit of nuance on that. So the recommendation was that we could add a goal to focus specifically on the percent of referrals for benefits navigation. That is already one of the referral types in the existing goal. So we could really accomplish that just by planning to report out overall and by service type. So it may just be more on the reporting format than the goal language itself though the guidance was if it's that important, we could write a goal. It would be a bit redundant in that it's a subcategory of the first one, but would absolutely follow guidance on those options.
No, the form of the reporting is the part that matters, right? And that's going to inform what we do with that information.
And reporting by service type, so we can dig into it.
Perfect.
And again, it's a really comprehensive list of service types. So that would bring us to the final gap, which was aging, where the recommendation was no changes, really just emphasizing the connection between this goal and our existing age-friendly action plan within aging and adult services.
All right, I believe we have consensus.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for going back through those. All right, commissioners, are there any other items for open discussion before we adjourn? If not, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. We will see you back here at 5 o'clock.